Hello, everyone, and welcome to a time management and overcoming procrastination workshop. My name is Sam, and I'm an academic success coach in the Learning Commons at Tallahassee Community College. And today we're going to be talking about procrastination. So this is something that is very common. About 95% of students report procrastinating at one time or another. And so we're going to talk about ways that you can better manage your time and organize your semester and sort of take back your own schedule. So let's start off with an icebreaker activity. I want you to go ahead and read over this scenario. You might find that it is similar to your week every week. You might find that your weeks are never like this. Either way, it's going to help us figure out how you are currently spending your time or how you currently manage your time. So let's read over it. Today is Monday, and it's gearing up to be a busy week. Your first English paper is due on Friday. You haven't started it yet. You have a math test to study for that needs to be completed by Sunday. You have to read 3 chapters and complete 1 assignment for history. And then you also have a quiz due in psychology on Thursday. In addition to school, you work a part-time job, so you're at that job Monday through Thursday from 2 to 6 p.m. So how would you go about planning out and organizing your week? I'm going to give you a moment to think over it and then type your answer here. All right. So like I said, procrastination is so normal. Everyone procrastinates. In fact, I almost don't believe when someone says that they do not procrastinate. It's that normal. But why is it such a hard habit for people to break? And so there are many reasons why a person could choose to procrastinate. And ultimately, what it does is it allows us to avoid tasks that we might find unpleasant, boring, difficult, too easy, or monotonous. Although there are so many different reasons why someone could procrastinate. If you have any ideas, let me know in the comments here. Let's go ahead and take a poll before we really get into the consequences of procrastination as well as some tips for time management. I want to ask the group, do you procrastinate on assignments, tasks, or with studying? Yes or no? So I asked this question on my TCC this week to the all students group, and 74% of students said yes, and then 26% of students said no. Now that we've determined that procrastination is a normal phenomenon, let's go ahead and talk about the consequences of procrastination. So while procrastination may help you avoid tasks in the short term, there are negative consequences associated with it. The first of which being increased stress and frustration. So I know that when I put something off into the last minute that I do start to think about it a lot. I get stressed out. Maybe I get a little frustrated when I start the task and realize it's going to take me way longer than I thought it was going to. And something that happens when we get stressed out is that it affects our sleep, which then impacts your memory. So now not only are you stressed out, but you're also tired and you're not remembering what you're learning. A second consequence of procrastination is failing or uncertain grades. If you put something off until the last minute, you could miss assignments. You could have a loss of points or deducted points for turning in assignments late. If you put off studying, you could fail a test. These are all detrimental to your success. And then last, there is lowered self-esteem. Now, this is an interesting one. And if you really think about it, it makes sense. If we put things off and we find that we are constantly stressed out and frustrated with school, if we have failing or uncertain grades, this could lead us to believe some pretty negative things about ourselves. Perhaps that we cannot succeed at school, or maybe this isn't for us, or I just can't do it. All of that is part of lowered self-esteem due to procrastination. I want to get into time management tips. But before I get started, I would like to ask, what are some of the most common time management tips that you know? And this could be something that has worked for you in the past, or maybe it's something that hasn't worked for you in the past. Either way, let me know here. All right, thank you for sharing. And I want to go ahead and just kind of jump into some of the tips that I have for you for time management. And the first one is to set or readjust your expectations. So this quote is taken directly from the students program through the TCC catalog. And it says that students are expected to spend at least 2 hours in preparation for each hour or credit hour of class lecture or recitation. So that means for a typical 3-hour class that you should anticipate spending about 6 hours a week preparing for that class. Now, that might be a lot longer than you expected. It might be shorter than you expected. But I want you to ask yourself, do you know how long it takes you to complete certain tasks? It's really easy to either underestimate or overestimate the amount of time it takes you to do something. And I'm going to use an example here of a discussion board. So say I'm taking a class and one of the activities of the week is a discussion board, and I have to complete the discussion by Sunday at 11:45 p.m. So I go about my week knowing that I have this discussion board due. And I say to myself, well, the discussion board is only going to take me about 20 minutes to complete. I can just wait until Sunday to do it. Well, Sunday comes around and I am thinking about doing the discussion board. It's getting later in the day, but I keep telling myself it's only going to take me about 20 minutes. So I wait later and later in the night, and now it's about 10:30 at night, and I decide, okay, well, I might as well get that discussion board done. It's due in about an hour. I read over the discussion board prompt, and I realize that this is going to take me quite a bit longer than I assumed it would. Not only do I have to answer 3 different questions within the discussion board, but I also have to answer to 2 students in the discussion board as well. So something that I assumed was only going to take me 20 minutes actually takes me about an hour to an hour and a half. So now I'm really cutting it close to that 11:45 deadline. It could also be the flip side of it as well. You could also overestimate the amount of time something takes you. Let's use that discussion board as an example again. So once again, we've got a discussion board. It's due on Sunday at 11:45 p.m. We look at the discussion board prompt ahead of time and we determine this is probably going to take me a while. It's probably going to take me an hour or two to answer the 3 questions in the prompt and then to make sure that I am adequately responding to 2 classmates. But I don't really have the time to dedicate 2 to 3 hours on discussion board right now, so I'm going to wait until I have enough time. Well, throughout the week, I determine day after day that I don't really have enough time to dedicate. I don't have the time to dedicate enough effort to the discussion board right now. And now it's Sunday. And I think, okay, I've finally completed everything else for class. I'm finally going to get to this discussion board. Once again, it's probably going to take me about 2 to 3 hours to complete it, so let's go ahead and get started around noon. Well, I sit down, I start writing out my answer for the discussion board, and I answer other students in the class, and it ends up only taking me about an hour to complete it. Well, I've scheduled away 3 hours, but it only took me an hour. So what am I going to do with that extra time? Now, that might not seem like that big of a problem having extra time, but we do want to make sure that you are setting your expectations so that you can set up your schedule in a way that you are putting enough effort into certain tasks and spending enough time on certain tasks. So my recommendation would be to, as you are starting to complete these different types of tasks, should it be a discussion board, should it be a paper, homework for math, an assignment, readings, quizzes, whatever it may be, go ahead and keep track of how long it takes you to complete those tasks so that you can adequately adjust your schedule in the future. My next time management tip is to write it down. Now, this is probably the most common time management tip. You always hear, get a planner, get a calendar, write things down. but I do want to talk about the benefits and perhaps the downsides of some of these types of time management tools. Because what works for one person might not work for another person. If you are someone who likes to see the big picture, so someone who likes to see sort of a month in advance, go ahead and use a calendar. As you know, the calendar, it just has 1 month there, and you can go ahead and write down deadlines. You could also backwards plan, which we'll talk about in just a few slides. But this is really for those big picture planners. If you're more of a micro planner, so someone who likes to look at the day-to-day type of plans, who likes to schedule out their entire day, someone who likes to know that they're going to wake up at 8 a.m., they go to class at 9, at 10 they're going to read, at 11 they're going to do their homework, at noon they're going to take lunch, and so on and so forth, then I think that a planner would be the best choice for you. And once again, you would use this to, of course, write out deadlines, but also to backwards plan, which once again we'll get to in just a few slides. If you're someone who needs a little more flexibility in their schedule, because I do know that many students have commitments outside of school. They have work, they have family and household obligations, and sometimes having a strict set schedule is not the best and can often lead to frustration. Because if there are so many variables out there that change your schedule all the time, then having a planner that tells you at noon you have to be doing something, well, that could be frustrating when at noon something else comes up. And so I recommend a structured weekly to-do list for students who have more outside obligations outside of school. And what I mean by a more structured to-do list is that I'm not looking at just a list of absolutely everything I have to do in a week, where there's nothing prioritized, where I don't know what the most important and pressing tasks are. And so there is a template that I am attaching to this video, and it is available for download, called an urgent important matrix. And what this helps you to do is create a to-do list that prioritizes your most urgent, so your tasks with upcoming deadlines, and the most important tasks, while also writing out some of the less important or less urgent tasks. But really what it does is help you prioritize what you have to do first. And it can be very satisfying to then be able to check off or cross off these items on your list. Now, if you are technologically savvy, then you may choose to use an app on your phone or a website. All that I would recommend with these is that you find one that has reminders built in, because it can be very, very easy to forget about deadlines if you're not reminded on that daily basis to go ahead and look at the app or the website. My next time management tip is to chop it up. What does this mean? It means that you need to look at big projects, assignments, tests, and tasks as not these big assignments, but really chop it up into singular tasks. And so what this does is it helps you feel a sense of accomplishment when you can get one piece of it done instead of focusing on the entire thing. And so, for example, it could be that you have to read 5 chapters this week for one of your classes. And so instead of thinking, I need to sit down and read 5 chapters, you can say, okay, over the next 5 days, I'm going to read 1 chapter. Chapter 1 on Monday, chapter 2 on Tuesday, and so on and so forth until you've completed the task. By completing just 1 chapter, you can think, wow, I'm 20% done. 2 chapters, 40% done. And really, that's going to help you to see the task through to completion. Let's go ahead and practice with 2 examples. Example number 1 is that English paper that's due this week. So you have not yet started it. How can you chop it up into smaller tasks? Let's go ahead and do another example here. So, thinking back to the scenario at the beginning again, you have a math test due on Sunday. You have not started studying yet. How can you chop it up? I hope that you have found those chop it up activities helpful in determining the smaller pieces of bigger tasks. But I want to talk about structuring your time through something called the Pomodoro method. And so, this is the idea that rewards and breaks are very important to your motivation and your determination to see a task through to completion. What you need to do is work towards an assignment, some sort of schoolwork, for 25 minutes. And you need to work with no distractions, without multitasking, and really giving your full dedication towards that task. After 25 minutes is up, this is when you're going to reward yourself with a break or some sort of other appropriate reward. So for 10 minutes, go ahead and set a timer. You want to be away from your work, relaxing and not thinking about your schoolwork. And you can do anything during this time. But once the timer goes off, you should go back to your schoolwork for 25 minutes and go ahead and repeat this process 3 times or as needed. After you've completed a bit over an hour of schoolwork and had those breaks in between, go ahead and take a longer, more extended break and then switch tasks if needed. And what this will give you is a bit over 1 hour of quality work time that is without distractions, that is without multitasking, and where you're giving full dedication towards that task. And we're going to talk about breaks and rewards in just a couple of slides. Next, let's talk about backwards planning. Backwards planning has you think about the end first, so starting with the end in mind. What is the deadline for your assignment, or what is your test date? This is where you should start, not end. After you've determined the deadline, go ahead and write it down in your calendar, on your planner, on your to-do list, on whatever write it down method you've selected. Now, what you need to do is chop it up. So, using some of these skills that we talked about earlier, determine those manageable sized pieces of the assignment and use these as milestones. Think about how long these tasks are going to take you to complete. And next, you want to go ahead and write it down. So by using the deadline as a starting point, work backwards and write down when you plan to complete each chopped up task. And this is eventually going to give you a start date. That's what I mean by backwards planning. You're going to start with the deadline and you're going to work backwards until you've determined the day that you have to start the task. Let's talk more about rewards. When people procrastinate, it's because they don't want to complete a certain task. So in a way, procrastination becomes a rewarding behavior. To replace this behavior, you need to start your own reward system for completing tasks. And remember that the reward itself needs to match the task that you've completed. And so while everyone's reward system will be different, you should make sure that it follows these guidelines. First, rewards have to fit the accomplishment. You do not want to give yourself something major when all you've done is complete something very small. But you also do not want to give yourself something small for completing something major. Otherwise, the reward itself is meaningless. You want to find rewards that are appropriate for the size of the task and have the power to motivate you. Next, you want to find rewards that are realistic. And so you shouldn't plan on doing something that you either can't afford or really hinges on someone else agreeing to do something with or for you. It needs to be immediate, and so it has to be right after you've completed the task. You can't tell yourself, okay, I'm going to reward myself next week for completing my essay this week. That's not going to be very motivating. You're not going to really look forward to completing that task because the reward itself is too far away. By non-distracting, this means that You do not want the reward to be so distracting that while you are completing the task, you're thinking so much about the reward and not about the task at hand. Make sure that the reward is healthy. So, obviously, I'm not going to recommend unhealthy habits or unhealthy rewards. Meaningful. So, for example, while doing the dishes might be meaningful for some, it's not really going to motivate me to do my homework. I wouldn't really find that a reward. And so I might actually put off the schoolwork because then it means I get to put off doing the dishes a little bit longer. Next, it needs to be positive. So you do not want to set up a punishment for not doing the task. You want to set up a reward for completing the task. And specific. If you're too vague, such as the reward will be that I'll go out somewhere, then that's not really motivating. I don't know where I'm going to go, what I'm going to do. It's not specific. I'd like to revisit the icebreaker. So we've gone through the consequences of procrastination. We've talked about different tips for time management. And so let's go right back to that icebreaker. Today is Monday and it's gearing up to be a busy week. You have your first English paper due on Friday, but you haven't started it yet. You have a math test to study for that you need completed by Sunday. You need to read 3 chapters and complete 1 assignment for history. And you also have a quiz due in psychology on Thursday night. But don't forget that in addition to school, you work a part-time job Monday through Thursday from 2 to 6 p.m. Now that you've learned about these tips for time management, how would you plan out and organize your week? I want to thank you so much for watching this time management workshop. I hope that you have picked up a few tips and tricks for time management and taking back your schedule this semester. If you'd like to work one-on-one with me on time management, planning out your schedule, or any of the tips that you've learned here today, please send me an email. I will go ahead and put that button right here.